just
And so, mhm.
if you'll go ahead and mute your mics. Thank you.
Good morning. We got some feedback. Okay. The March 19th, 2024 meeting of the Charter Authorizing Panel is called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Department of Education and ask that you please silence all your electronic devices. The goal is to facilitate a fair and responsible hearing. So therefore, I ask that each person speaking please state your name and title for the record. I ask that you continue to speak clearly into the microphone throughout your presentation for the benefit of the panel, this audience, and the viewing audience. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and a transcript of the meeting will be posted on the DESE website. All right, good morning, everybody. We have a consent agenda before you today, and if there are no questions, I'll accept a motion to pass the consent agenda.
So moved.
All right, second. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Ms. Summons?
Good morning, Dory Summons, DESE Charter Office. This morning we have a continuation of our review of the charters. We have two schools that are present this morning. The first one that will be presenting before you is East End Public School. We have Mr. Mark Millahone, who is the superintendent, and we also have Ms. Jessie Forrester, who is the executive director of operations here this morning.
Thank you very much. All right, well, all those who plan on testifying on behalf of the charter, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. All right, you may begin.
Good morning, distinguished members of the Charter Authorizing Panel. My name is Mark Millholland. I'm currently the interim CEO for East End Public Charter Schools, and actually this is my second term as interim CEO. The first was due to the retirement of our second leader at East End, Dr. John Bacon. But John did not leave the education field. He actually is working for the University of Arkansas as the project director for a program they have called Project Impact. And Project Impact recruits and trains applicants for leadership positions in high poverty schools, districts that are in the state of Arkansas. My second opportunity began in February of '24 due to the unexpected death of Dr. Cherie Labatt, who had just come on board in July of '23. The community really missed a gem in her, as she was an outstanding lady and had a lot of ideas and was excited about being here. Currently, our board is conducting a national search. Every other week, the board is meeting with our search firm to ensure that there's progress toward having a leader no later than July 1st. Our presentation today is to provide our plan of action to raise our two schools' letter grades from D's. We offer no excuses for these unacceptable letter grades that we have received, and today we will present the facts of what we are doing about it. I would like at this time to introduce our Executive Director of Operations, Jessie Forrester.
Good morning. I'm Jessie Forrester, Executive Director of Operations for East End. Thanks so much for having us today. To start,
It may need to be turned on the
Okay.
side.
There we go. To start, here's a brief timeline of our history starting in 2008. We've had several expansions over our 16 years and have grown from around 1,000 students to almost 3,000 students district-wide. In 2008, I was a kindergarten teacher at East End, and our faculty and staff worked together to develop the mission statement that embodies what we are striving to achieve for our students each day. Over the years, we have faced many challenges. Some expected: growth, expansion, acclimating new students to our school culture. Some unprecedented, like a global pandemic. But through it all, we have remained steadfast to our mission. We've used these challenges as opportunities to innovate, adapt, and grow stronger, which is exactly what we want to teach our students. Together, we are using the same skills outlined in our mission: critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, to grow stronger and be an example for our students as we encourage them to take risks, grow, and achieve despite the challenges they may face. Today, I'm excited and thankful for the opportunity to show you how we are committed to taking the necessary steps to help our students succeed. First, a little bit about our schools. Downtown Elementary is located in the heart of downtown. It serves over 800 students in grades K through 6. 75% of our student population is economically disadvantaged, and 15% are receiving special education services. Last year, our overall school index was a 62.85. East Village Elementary opened in 2018 and serves over 700 students. 73% are economically disadvantaged and 16% are receiving special education services. Last year at East Village Elementary, our overall school index was 61.74. Next, these graphs show the percentage of our students that are scoring proficient on NWEA reading and math MAP assessments in the fall and winter of 2023. As you can see, we were alarmed that the winter scores showed a drop in proficiency. When we received our ACT Aspire scores in the summer of 2023, we immediately went to work to analyze the data with our school leadership teams. We began a curriculum audit with a consultant who had proven results in raising low-achieving schools 1 to 2 letter grades. She evaluated our instructional materials and resources, and together we worked to create school improvement plans and begin the work towards those goals. But after seeing this data in the winter, our sense of urgency was at an all-time high, and we were disappointed that we weren't seeing the results that we were working towards. This led us to come back together with our school leadership teams to collaborate on our next steps. While we weren't pleased with the data from the fall to the winter of 2023, I do want to highlight the growth that we are seeing from year to year. In slides 6 and 7, you will see our NWEA comparisons for reading and math from the fall and winter of 2022 to this year's scores. And while we have room for improvement as we work towards proficiency, we did have 100% of our classes in math show growth at both schools, and in reading, all but 4 classes showed growth. To quote an op-ed in yesterday's Democrat Gazette, Sarah McKenzie from the Office of Educational Policy said, "Schools can't control who walks in their school door, but they can control the quality of the instruction. What matters to me, and maybe to you, is how much students are actually learning while they are in school. While we are still maintaining our focus on achievement, we also want to celebrate our growth as a true representation of what our students are learning." There are several components that we believe have contributed to where we are today. In addition to our superintendent changes that Mr. Mulholland mentioned, we've had a new director at one elementary campus, and we had the director leave unexpectedly in October of last year. While we are fortunate to have an assistant director who steps seamlessly into the role, change is still difficult, and it does impact student and teacher success. We all know the pandemic has had a profound impact on our students, and all of us, most of which we probably don't even know yet. Our 4th grade students were kindergartners who spent a quarter of their year at home, and then in the next 1 to 2 years, students spent time in virtual and/or in-person classes with masks and other challenges. The pandemic has had negative effects on all schools, but we would be remiss to not include it as a piece of the puzzle as where we are today. As you can see from this data, our student population has significantly changed since our expansion. Our economically disadvantaged population has more than doubled in the last 5 years, and research shows that students who are socially or economically disadvantaged tend to be 7 to 13 months behind their peers. Pre-expansion, our board wanted to see an increase in our economically disadvantaged students because we had a model that was working, and we wanted to reach more students who may not have had another option. However, we did not expect that as we increased our student numbers, we would also be facing a national shortage of teachers and a global pandemic, so it was the perfect storm. We increased our number of students who were coming in with more needs, As you can see, we have an average of 16% of students receiving special education, and 14% are receiving interventions because they are showing the characteristics of dyslexia. We decreased our number of certified teachers, and while we have amazing teachers without experience and background in education, some are not as equipped to provide the much needed support and services that students with greater needs require. While we are confident in the support we are providing our teachers and students, we are in effect building the plane while we are flying it due to some circumstances outside of our control. I want to reiterate that we have outstanding teachers who are dedicated to our students and work endlessly to help them grow and achieve. Like I said, we all know there's a national shortage of teachers and those entering the field of education, and that, coupled with the competitive environment here in Little Rock, it makes it very difficult to recruit and retain certified teachers. We have many novice teachers with less than 3 years of experience and high percentages of non-certified staff. Many of our non-certified teachers are working on their certification through alternative pathways. We have supports in place to provide that on-the-job training, excuse me, like targeted professional development, effective feedback, and resources. Since we have expanded, the number of students needing services has more than doubled. In 2017, we had 7% of our students receiving special ed services compared to 16% now. We had 2% of students receiving intervention for the characteristics of dyslexia, and we now have 14%. We had 1% receiving ELL services compared to 5% now. In addition, in our elementary schools, we have an average of 61.5% of students who are moderately to chronically absent, meaning that more than half of the students at each campus are missing anywhere from 9 to 18 or more days of school. We do have systems in place to address this, both at the school and district level. Our schools offer incentives and rewards for good attendance, in addition to reaching out to parents by phone, by letter, by meeting, to see how can we help support you in getting your child to school. At the district level, we also are reaching out to parents, especially when they hit that chronically absent point. We report students for truancy, and we are all working together to change that mindset that has grown since the pandemic about the importance of being at school, especially at elementary grades. We do not want to make excuses, but we want to see these challenges as opportunities to innovate, adapt, and grow stronger. Our students deserve that and more. So let's talk about how we're going to get there. The first step is to set goals for growth and achievement. We will increase our overall index score for each school by at least 5 points, which will get us to a C or better. In literacy and math, we want to increase the percentage of showing growth by reaching proficiency by at least 5%. This will be determined by our NWEA and Atlas assessments. How will we do this? By implementing strategies that are proven to work, like those listed. As we analyze our data each year, we do want to see where we compare to area charter schools. In this graph, you can see where we fall among other local elementary charter schools. And we also took a comparison of local traditional public schools. We looked for schools that had a similar free and reduced lunch population to compare to. You can see where we fall there. Like I said before, challenges provide us with opportunities to innovate, and we love the creativity and flexibility that comes with being a charter school. A few of the innovations we are implementing to support our students and teachers are things like Ignite, our after-school program that provides students with an opportunity for intervention and enrichment while they are waiting for their parents to pick them up. We want to utilize every minute that we have them on campus. These classes are led by teachers who not only provide academic support, but also are able to incorporate their passions and interests to provide real-world learning and application. For example, one teacher is leading a chess class. He teaches students how to play chess, they play against each other, and at the end of the semester, they held a chess tournament at the school. We also are excited to partner with local businesses and organizations to provide resources to our students and opportunities to our teachers. CALS is providing digital tech cards to all families to to increase their access to the library. UALR and Reach University provide opportunities for teachers and paraprofessionals to pursue their certification while continuing to work at Eastham. Our teachers are receiving training in TRIS to be trauma-informed and address the needs of our families, and we are participating in the UDL project opportunity with DESE and Novak Education. To build a culture and love for reading, we are implementing POWER, positive outcomes while enjoying reading time, that allows us to set aside specific time each day dedicated to grade level reading for all students K through 12. These innovations support our students and contribute to the components we are implementing in our action plan for improvement. This plan consists of 4 parts: effective classroom observations, professional learning communities, support for our teachers, and standards tracking. We believe that when these 4 components are implemented with fidelity, they will result in student growth and achievement. As we began planning for improvement, we started by developing a vision for our teachers to provide professional growth opportunities and curricular support for teachers and staff to effectively use high-quality instructional materials and analyze student data to drive grade-level instruction with a sense of urgency. This laid the foundation for our plan and provided a vision for how we were going to move forward. I want to share a little bit more about each component and then our timeline for implementation and next steps. In education, we all know that classroom observations with strong feedback is one key to teacher growth, which leads to student success. We knew this had to be an area of focus for us to support our teachers and provide feedback and resources for them. Our leadership teams have been trained in Danielson's framework for teaching and in conducting observations with effective feedback. We developed a system for each member of the leadership team to conduct 4 observations per week. They then hold post-observation conferences to provide constructive feedback and support and an opportunity for teacher reflection. On this slide, you can see an example of a post-observation conference forum between a teacher and an administrator. Reflection is such an important part of this process, and yet it's one component that usually gets overlooked because we all have so much on our plates and so little time. This system sets aside time specifically for reflection and those important conversations between teachers and leaders to build capacity. This observation is monitored at the district level to ensure it is being implemented with fidelity, and I'm excited to say that as of today, our leadership teams district-wide have conducted 1,031 observations. The next component is the consistent implementation of professional learning communities, or PLCs. Teachers meet twice weekly with instructional facilitators to provide guidance and support to analyzing student data, planning effective instruction, determining the best ways to assess content and standards for mastery. Each campus created instructional models, as you can see in this slide, to provide a map for high-quality instruction and teaching and expectations. These provide a standard of instruction for all of our classrooms. In PLCs, teachers are using student data to determine student grouping to ensure strong Tier 1 instruction. They also review common formative and summative assessments to determine mastery and identify students who are in need of reteaching and/or intervention supports. As I said earlier, teacher observations with feedback and reflection are vital pieces of this plan and important to teacher growth and success. But what do we do when observations show that a teacher is struggling? Maybe they're having a hard time with classroom management, or they need more instructional strategies to reach their students. This is where the 3rd component of our action plan comes into play. Providing differentiated support for teachers based on their needs, which come from observations and student outcomes, takes our observation system to the next level. When a teacher is struggling, our building leaders work with them to develop a support plan, as you can see an example in this slide, to identify areas for growth and resources to support those areas. The average years of teaching experience for our teachers is right around 3 years, and 60% are not certified. So it is imperative that we have a sense of urgency to equip them with the resources they need in order to be effective in the classroom right now. The final component of our action plan is intentional standards tracking. Our teachers are utilizing standards trackers, which you can see here, that list the standards, date taught, and whether or not the student mastered the concept, or if a reteach is needed and when. So often when we get in the mode of teaching, assessing, and moving on to that next skill without ever making a conscious effort to check for understanding and reteach to those who need additional support. This data is then used to formulate small groups, intervention and enrichment support for students, and to plan future instruction. We have implemented common district informative assessments, and this data, along with classroom assessments and standardized test data, are the tools our teachers need to ensure we are utilizing data-driven instruction for student growth and achievement. This data also drives our response to intervention and what I need time for daily intervention support and enrichment opportunities. Finally, we want to show you a timeline for how we have implemented these components and where we plan to go from here. Last July, we received our data and began analyzing the information to create those improvement plans and set our goals. In August, 2 consultants joined our team and began working closely with our academic department to conduct a curriculum audit and to create this action plan for improvement. Our students take the fall NWEA test in September to provide baseline data for this year. In October, our curriculum audit was complete, and that provided us with recommendations and suggestions, and the meat of this action plan really began. In November, we began monitoring the observation system to ensure it was being implemented with fidelity and that PLCs were occurring consistently. This continues through December when we administer the winter NWEA. When we returned from winter break, we began to dive into this data, and this is where we did see growth, but our percentage of students reaching proficiency was not where we wanted it to be, which led to the next component of our plan, that standards tracking. In February, our action plan is fully implemented. All components are being monitored at the district level for fidelity. Currently, we are reviewing summative data from common assessments and gearing up for the Atlas assessment, which is just about here. From here, we will administer the Atlas and Spring NWEA assessments, which will provide us with that important data to begin this process again in July. In closing, we are excited about the components that we have put into place for teachers to provide support for student growth and achievement and to lay the foundation for an action plan that will be ongoing as we move forward. Next year, we will be able to kick this off on day one and start providing the resources and support for our students and teachers to ensure success. Thank you for allowing us to share this with you today.
Thank you. We'll start down here with Ms. Newton.
We all acknowledge, while we all acknowledge the impact of COVID, I'm wondering if there is any connection or correlation between the decrease in score based on or connected to the non-certified staff, the number of non-certified staff that you have.
I think it definitely could be a factor. When we expanded, we almost doubled our elementary teaching staff, and it was very difficult to find certified staff to fill those positions. So while we have non-certified teachers who are working in those positions, we are working to provide opportunities for them to reach certification through alternative pathways. But yes, I do agree that it contributed.
And so in retrospect, would you recommend or would you have considered a gradual increase in students to try to match it, you know, for future practices or for other charters that are looking at growth, given the lack of people entering the field? So would that be a priority, or would you just work hard 24/7 to get where you need to be, or would you have a gradual?
I think a
increase?
gradual growth would be a little bit more feasible, especially in the climate that we're in with fewer teachers out there. I think that would serve schools that are looking to expand better, while also working 24/7 to help them.
I guess this is a statement rather than a question or proclamation or whatever it is. What are we going to do about that, given that kids are not going to stop coming and eventually getting into school? You know, is the department or the leadership, is that, I guess that's not a question, it's a statement, because I don't know if anybody can answer that, but I think that's certainly something that the department should address, because given the best set of circumstances, we'll still continue to decline as long as we face this challenge.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin?
Thank you. I appreciate all the detail.
Thank you.
And clearly you guys have put a lot of thought into this. And I agree with your list of challenges, starting with leadership changes. That's always tough, and hopefully you all will get past that. The two areas I wanted to ask about would be the non-traditional teachers. I think that's probably several people are going to ask about that, and then the student attendance, because those feel to me like things we can control better than we can. You know, the pandemic, no one could control that.
Right.
But so let me ask you, then, the non-traditional teachers, and Ms. Newton asked that too, and you answered her well with her question. So as you all look at the level of non-traditional teachers you have, where would be a point where you would feel that you've achieved success? Because you're always going to have some. You know, you probably don't need 61% of your teachers non-traditional. So where would be the range that you would feel like you have enough trained teachers on staff? What percent?
You know, I think in looking at student outcomes to see how our students are performing based on, you know, a classroom level, to see, you know, certification doesn't necessarily mean that teachers are going to be successful. So I think really analyzing the student data that comes from each teacher to see how they're performing, and maybe providing ways for those teachers to reach certification. Like I said, we have great teachers, and I don't want it to seem like we're not saying that. They are amazing. But I do think that really probably the most important piece would be to look at student data by teacher to see how they're doing. And then as we see teachers that maybe are having a more difficult time, either provide them with another way for certification or for different resources.
So do you all have, so I'm going to harp on this a little bit. So do you all have specific programs to help teachers become certified?
Well,
What
we
is that
assist them.
process?
There are like the programs through DESE that help them become certified. They can work on getting like a master's in teaching that would help them provide certification. We have in the past had like a teacher residency program that took people in the STEM field that didn't have a teaching degree and provided them with that on-the-job training. And after they finished a certain amount of time and teaching requirements, then they were given their certification. So I think there are a lot of alternative ways out there for teachers to get them. You know, I think that it's hard to be a teacher, and then if you add that on, it's another thing to work towards. So I think providing them with different alternatives that help.
Do certified teachers get paid more than
No,
non-certified?
sir.
So
No,
it's the
sir.
same. So they're really not incented financially
Right.
to do this. You know, I like your plan. What I would suggest, because I'm kind of a numbers person, is to create pathways for, so you've got certain specific goals that you're trying to hit. So my thought would be, okay, are you on target? You know, I think you need to have a goal that you're shooting for. And if it's all just verbiage, you know, we never know whether you're making progress or
Okay.
not. So I would create a goal for this, whatever that would be, and then track that and say, are we getting there, or are we not? What levers can we pull to help our teachers be certified? I understand that's not a magic thing, but it's a good thing.
Right, it is.
And, you know, I'm used to seeing, I think we all are, in rural communities, a lot of non-certified. In Little Rock, it's a little bit different. So my next question would be, are you all competitive? Are you all able to compete with the other schools? You know, you've got all these public schools, you've got, you know, traditional public schools. So is there a competitive challenge that you have to face with that?
There is. I think that with the implementation of LEARNs and the salary changes, I think that has helped us tremendously to be competitive with local schools. As far as the things that we offer, they're very similar to a traditional public school, and so some of that would be, I think, kind of getting the misconceptions cleared up for teachers, that we offer teacher retirement and benefits and all of those things that you would have at a traditional public school too. But I think that salary was probably the biggest aid and to help us to be competitive.
Okay, okay, so that's a good thing. You know, down here in the slide where you have your SMART goals,
Yes, sir.
and how will we achieve these goals? Once again, I'm a big believer in numbers, because I think numbers they create a discipline that
Right.
you don't have if you don't have numbers. So I would come up and have some numbers under this on tracking success, and I think that will help you. I mean, I'm not saying this to be mean. I just think it would help you all know where you're at, and maybe you could make some corrective course changes as you go.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
So I know
that
you're
feedback.
I know you're determined to
Yes, we
to
are.
fix this.
Thank you.
So my final question is, so how long do you think it will take for you all to improve your letter grade for these two elementary schools?
I mean, our goal is to hit that C at least next year.
Okay, well, that's pretty fast, so that's better than I thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to address a point that you brought up as well, which is the attendance piece. So I just wanted to know, like, what data you actually have on why students aren't attending.
Well, I would have to talk a little bit more with our school leadership teams. I think that it's a variety of reasons. We don't provide traditional transportation like typical public schools and other schools, so I think that contributes. And I really, I am not 100% sure. I think that it's many different things, and I think that with COVID, people saw that not coming to school wasn't as big of a priority, and so I think that that's unfortunately one big factor.
And I think, just because you had brought it up earlier, I think that that's something that I saw sort of missing from the goals.
Okay.
I mean, you did discuss, the incentives, but what if it's not the incentives that are keeping them from coming? Maybe if there's, there could be a number of reasons why they're not coming, and so if you can collect that data and then come up with some goals surrounding that, I think that would be really helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis?
Thanks for the presentation. Let's just stay on that for a little bit. Are you seeing an impact in regards to attendance and enrollment? Where are you in regards to your enrollment numbers? Do you know off the top of your head?
We are a little below our enrollment numbers, not at the elementary levels, not by too much. I don't know the exact percentage, but a little bit below where we had projected.
Any idea, is that why that might be the case?
It's possible.
Okay. I do want to dig into a couple things, and some of them have to do with what my committee members have already inquired about. In regards to the certification piece, has there been, and I am not suggesting that there need be, I'm just asking really if there's been a question around a policy in regards to teacher certification. Has there been conversation? You've talked a little bit about things and the support that's there. Have you all moved on a policy that would require certification within a certain period of years, number of years?
We've had discussions about that. And, being a charter school, it does offer us some of those flexibilities and waivers that allow us to hire non-certified teachers. There have been discussions. I think it's a balance between having the flexibility and being able to hire people maybe who are experts in a field but don't have that certification, and making sure we have what we need for our students.
Yeah, that's a challenging conversation, as you sort of mentioned, as you're just trying to get the most competent people right in the classroom. So I know it's a very challenging conversation. But I think it speaks to the goals of what Mr. Baldwin was talking about, kind of putting some hard number there, and then how do you then respond to what you've now put on paper, if you think that that's where, you know, the most need is. You talked about the response once you all got the scores. Did your baseline scores in the fall not indicate that this might be an issue coming your way?
Yes, sir. We started creating those improvement plans in July.
Okay.
I think as we saw some of the data that we were getting, we amped up kind of that implementation and ensuring that it was occurring across the board. But no, in July, when we originally got our ACT Aspire scores, we saw that there was going to be, you know, some holes there, and so started working on that then.
Good. You also mentioned a 5% in growth scores. Is that
growth to proficiency? So our proficiency scores.
Okay, growth to proficiency. Do you know? Have you all had in the history of the school any indication that that's a possibility? I'm just wondering how aggressive you are and what that might look like.
Yeah, I think that we do think that that is feasible based on the things that we're doing and things we have seen. We have seen that growth continue, and then comparing last year to this year, seeing how our students are growing. Even though they're not quite reaching that proficiency, we felt like that was a good percentage to put in place that we could meet.
Okay. So based upon past performance, you feel as if that's it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Teacher feedback. And you talked about the number of classroom observations that you've done. Walk me through once that happens, and you went into this a little bit. Walk me through once that happens, what that looks like.
Yeah, so we have an administrator that goes into the classroom to do an observation. After that, they share with the teacher some of their feedback, glows and grows type things, and then next steps, and then the teacher.
And when is that done? I'm sorry to cut you off. I just
No,
want
that's
to get
okay.
very specific on this.
Sure.
When is that done after?
After, I would say that's done within the 1 to 2 days after the observation occurs. And then that also gives the teacher time to reflect on the observation and that feedback given by the leader. And then within that 1 to 2 days, they come together and meet to discuss the feedback, and then what are the next steps? What are some things that they could implement? You know, 1 to 2 things, not anything overwhelming, but 1 to 2 things that they could implement that would help them to just get a little bit closer to proficient success.
And you also mentioned the PLCs, and walk me through what that process looks like as well.
Sure. So our teachers have common planning time as a grade level. So each week they'll meet twice. I think it's like on a Tuesday and Thursday, for example. During that time they bring student assessment, they bring those standards trackers to really analyze that information to then go, okay, we know what our next step is on our pacing guide, but what are we going to do to ensure that our students are able to reach those?
And who leads that
concepts?
PLC?
We have instructional facilitators at each campus that work with the building level leadership and then work with the teachers to lead those discussions and those meetings.
Okay. And are those instructional leaders, are they by grade? Are they, or do they serve a whole school? I'm trying to figure out how you assess the instructional leaders. Like if they're working with a particular PLC and you see tremendous growth and movement versus another instructional leader working with another PLC and you don't see much happening there. Like I'm trying to figure out, is there a way to get some more data information around instructional leaders that are working with the PLCs in order to move things forward?
So we have 2 at one campus and then 2 and a half, 2 and another leader that helps with that at another campus. But they work with specific content areas, so they may be more focused on literacy and social studies, and ones may be more math, science. And then even within that, they may have more specialty in the grade levels that they have expertise in. So one may be more focused on K through 2, while the other one is more 3 through 6. So it varies, but they all have some kind of expertise depending upon that person, to then see what teachers they're working with and what grade levels to ensure that we're really getting the best people in there. And I agree. I think assessing how that's doing to then see, okay, this group is working really well. What are they doing differently than another group? And so looking at student outcomes and how through those observations and seeing which instructional strategies are working and which students are performing to really analyze what is the most effective as far as those PLCs.
Are instructional leaders provided a stipend?
Well, they're on a different salary, so they work more days. They work, a lot of them work teachers at ESTEM that we have that either pursued their masters in like curriculum and instruction or things like that to move into that role.
Yeah. Just a couple more questions.
Sure.
Sorry about that. You talked a lot about in regards to the teachers and the support that they're being given. Talk to me a little bit about the leadership support. What opportunities are there for either building leaders or administrators to ensure that they're getting what they need as far as professional development is concerned?
Right. So I have a counterpart that's over academics, and so she and I work very closely with those leadership teams, the directors, which is what we call the principals, and then their team at the school level to ensure that they do have the resources and things that they need, that what we're asking them to do is feasible, and getting that feedback from them of how can it be improved, how can we ensure that it's being done, so that they're provided district level support, and then also collaboration among between the two school leadership teams so that they can work together to see, are you seeing this? Or, what are you doing about this? Some of that collaboration that's really important as well.
Yeah. I take that back. I got two more questions. One was you talked about the feedback for teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and you also kind of lifted up in the presentation the standard tracking for students and what that might look like. Can you walk me through that process? I understand that happens. What's the next step? And I know you talked about intervention. How often does that happen? Who does that happen with? Just some of those
Sure.
details.
So for the standards tracking, basically that looks like standards that they have at that grade level, when they're going to be assessing it. In those PLCs, they work to develop those common assessments. So they're assessing it, and then did the student master it or not? And if not,
So you're tracking that by student?
yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry.
So if not, when is that reteach going to be? And if that reteach, maybe they're presenting the information in a different way. So they might see that a student that mastered it one way didn't master it that way. So that gives us even more data to know, okay, we've got to make sure that we are presenting it in a variety of ways to ensure mastery. From there, I would say, looking at the data, if you see a student that is struggling repeatedly, then that really provides us with the information needed that student may need to go through the RTI process for more intensive intervention. If students maybe periodically are having a hard time, then that's when we pull in that small group instruction as part of the regular school day, if differentiated in the classroom, tier 1 instruction where the teacher's providing that. We have other enrichment and elective teachers that also help provide it daily as far as intervention for students.
So these things are happening either in a pull-out format
or in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. And then where are you finding your teachers? Where are they coming
All
from?
over. We have a lot of teachers. We go to job fairs. We get brand new teachers that are coming to us. We have teachers that, word of mouth that have other people. We implemented like a referral program last year to see, we feel like word of mouth is probably the best way to get good people in. And so a lot of different ways. I'm open to any other suggestions.
Yeah, no, it's probably something, if you had the secret sauce, you might not want to say to the world, because folks will kind of use those things. The last question that I have is, what are the one or two things that you would lift up that you're doing now that you weren't doing? So a lot of what you covered are things that either have been happening or you may have been doing, right, prior to the last year, 2 years, right? When you talk about PLCs and teacher feedback and you know, those types of things. What are the one or two things that you feel as if we're doing this now and we weren't doing this before?
Right. I think two things. One being, I think we were doing a lot of these things, but we weren't necessarily doing them consistently across the board. And so I think that one thing I would say is that kind of that monitoring of the plan and the steps would be one thing that's going to make a big difference. And secondly, that standards tracking. I think we were doing that in different ways, but we didn't have a strong process that all teachers were using to really look at the data. Okay, like I said, you get so much in to kind of your mode as a teacher and not, you know, really, you've got things you've got to get to. You've got a pacing guide you've got to follow. So really making a conscious effort to go back, look at those students who are not mastering the concept or maybe aren't, you know, like I said, getting it in every way you're presenting it, to reteach and ensure mastery. I think that's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for all the answers.
Thank you.
Can I have a follow-up? And I don't know who this is directed to necessarily, but my service on the State Board of Education and transitioning to this panel, the way I understood it initially, that the waivers were allowed for charters have innovative approaches to providing young people what they needed. That might be an engineer that wasn't certified. When did it shift to just, we need teachers? And so that's what I remember, and I could be wrong about it, but the waivers were not exclusively maybe for charters, but certainly that was one of the things that was listed, as I understand it, in the law. And so now we're dealing with another iteration, whatever that word is. Y'all help me with that. But anyway, we're dealing with another whole concept about certified teachers, and somehow I missed it. That when we flowed from it, I can certainly understand the need for it and maybe COVID driving, but I do remember, because charters came before I left State Board, and that waiver was tied, as I remember. Is that correct?
I mean, I think originally that was the purpose, but I think as our teacher shortage has increased, the waivers have been used for other areas outside. But I will say this, if they are in a core area, they must be AQT, which is Arkansas Qualified Teacher, which there are specific qualifications, including 18 hours of credit in the content area. So there are pieces in there that allow for them to be content experts, even though they are on a waiver of licensure specifically. Does that make sense?
It does. Which group is more impacted? Charters or schools that are not charters?
I can't say definitively, but I would say it's pretty much the pipeline is difficult for everyone right now, you know, across the board.
It'd be interesting to see the percentage of non-certified teachers relative to letter grades, you know.
Yes.
And so you were assuming that in charters that there's a non-conventional or non-traditional or innovative approach. So I'd like to see how impactful that is. The non-certified staff, is it more of a negative impact in one population than another? Then maybe we look at something around that, or trying to address that.
I think that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
I like that point, and in particular, the question is whether or not the non-certified is really, are the performances tracking successfully? You can be certified and still the performance may not be tracking. There may be other elements associated with performance. So if you're looking at performance, tracking certifications is one thing, but other aspects is
Well, and I want to be careful that, you know, I want to be careful about the correlation. I think there's something there, but I think we have the ability, whether a teacher is certified or not, to understand if the kids in front of that teacher is learning or not, right? So we may not even need to look at it from a certification, non-certification. We just need to be able to figure out how we provide transparent information to school leaders, which I'm sure we probably do, around whether the students in a particular class that's taught by teacher A, right, is meeting expectation or not, whether they're certified or not. Because I think it's important information to get. I think you're right. When we look at, and I know those numbers, for example, in South and Southeast Delta, those numbers are extremely high of uncertified teachers compared to what we have in Northwest Arkansas. So I am not saying that this is not something that, you know, we should not look at. I think that there is some correlation there. I just want to be thoughtful that we're not saying, you know, because the numbers will come back as such that.
Yeah.
So I think we can even do a deeper dive to get a better
Absolutely.
understanding, to provide
Absolutely.
to institutions the information they need to then make decisions about development of teachers and or how do we get individuals in the classroom that are able to meet the expectation.
And certainly it could be tied to a number of things like the situation, socioeconomic,
Yeah,
lack
absolutely.
of a variety of things, but the disparity, and when you look at, I think my point, Mr. Davis, is more toward how we looked at charters in the beginning, and you know what it was designed to do, and with the assistance of added funding and different things like that. So that was my question about how do we evaluate it based on a number of factors.
And then the last thing I will say, because I know I've taken up a tremendous amount of time, is we may want to explore this idea of if there isn't a certification in place, what then is the responsibility of an individual to maintain or get a certification? Because, you know, when there are requirements in order to maintain a certification, right, that allows teachers to continue to develop and grow based upon the number of hours that they do. If that requirement is not there, right, or is that individual who's not certified gonna invest in the development fully because they're not getting anything out of it? So I think there's something else to think about.
And my final, I promise, is there a difference between the pay?
No, ma'am.
There's no difference. So a non-certified, to your point,
Yes.
it gets the same, it's the same compensation as a certified.
I will just put in a plug here for master and lead teacher designations.
Okay.
Looking at how those master teachers are content area experts and how that might be beneficial for, you know, to Mr. Davis's point earlier about leadership, it puts that extra level in there to say, okay, now we have these content area experts that can go in and actually work with our teachers to make sure that they've got up-to-date content and that they're, you know, right where they need to be with their
Right.
field.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Scott?
Yes, absolutely. I want to first preface this by thanking you, Ms. Forster and Dr. Mulholland, for the work that you're doing at Easton. At the end of the day, there's an idea that translated to individuals getting together saying, hey, we're going to target urban America, urban Arkansas, specifically Little Rock, downtown Little Rock. And that in itself says a lot, because in order to do that, to be successful, you have to have a decent understanding of your demographic and to put the necessary operational elements into place to be successful. Along the way, you proved yourself successful, but you also enhanced your growth by expanding. And one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons you're here today is because the track record that you've exhibited before all of a sudden hit a bump. And so part of our discussion today is try to better understand the elements associated with that and how we collectively can talk about how we can move the needle towards success even at the elementary schools that we're targeting here. So I want to say thank you for the work you've done. You've had leadership transitions, and our prayers obviously for the loss of your recent CEO. So glad to hear that John is doing the work, Project Impact, I believe. So that's pretty awesome that you're staying in line, focused on, from a heart's decision about serving kids that need it the most.
Thank you.
I don't normally do this. I appreciate this opportunity, but I'm going to leverage my experience in team sports.
Okay.
We've had a lot of discussion today about the certification, the teachers, et cetera, and the leadership. But I believe also there are other players that come into play in regards to the success of our kids. Namely, I come from this world of engagement, as you know, Jesse. And in that world, there is an element of how we reach out to families and community partners to be a viable player in the success of our kids. So if you could just take a moment, please, and speak to how you plan to incorporate data that you get, not just from the academic data from the students, but also their families, what's going on in their world, and how a plan can be developed to play a role in moving the needle of academic performance.
Right, right. You know, I think we're working hard since COVID, especially to get that parent engagement back up to where it was before. And starting with strong parent organizations at both campuses, we call them E-Team, and they are working hard to provide opportunities for parents to be on campus, volunteer opportunities or reading to students in the classroom, but utilizing our parents as part of the team to really make a difference, because we all know that engaged parents translate to higher performing students and happier students too. So I think we are being able to kind of amp up the opportunities parents have to be a part of the school community, whether it's family nights, dances, assemblies, things like that, bringing them back on campus and having them at times that are convenient for parents to be on campus or when it works with their schedule. And so really working to increase those opportunities for our families. And then partnering with other kind of organizations in our community like CALS to kind of inform parents of things that they have available to them to really help them and their students to grow and to improve and achieve.
Can you describe, is there a difference between the engagement with families at the elementary schools versus those at some of the other campuses?
Yes, I think at the elementary it is a little bit higher. Being elementary, usually their parents are a little bit more involved. I think really promoting positive parent involvement and not just if a parent is upset about something, then that's when we see them, but really providing opportunities for them to be a positive presence and really for their child to see them involved in school and that importance. And I think as we increase those engagement opportunities and having more parents to be a part of our school community, I think things like attendance will improve, and in addition to scores and letter grades.
And when it comes to data, any findings that you have that kind of sort of resonate to you in regards to what's really going on when the kids leave you and go home?
Some, you know, we do surveys, and our counselors work really hard with our families to provide them with the supports and resources that they need when they go home. And so working to build those relationships so that parents feel comfortable sharing those things with us, I think has been something we've been focused on, especially with our counselors this year, to really get to know our families. We have very large elementary schools, and so I think taking the time to really seek out partners in the parents and the families rather than just another member of the team.
I would simply add to that, I spoke earlier about the team sports piece, because this is March Madness coming up. So, even though I may have a great three-point shooter on my team, that person that can hit the free throw is just as valuable, or can get a rebound is just as valuable.
Right.
So when you look at joint development of things in your leadership team, I believe you've spoken to the involvement, joint development and involvement of various stakeholders, including family members. I think that's going to be huge as you better understand what their needs are and how you can map an appropriate solution with the community partners, et cetera, to assist.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Dr. Wright McMurray?
Well, thank you again for your presentation. You guys have a well thought out plan to try to address some of your challenges. I know my colleagues have covered quite a bit of what I had questions about. I would just circle back around and strongly encourage that you look at creating a goal around recruitment and retention strategies for your teachers. Because it looks like that what you have in place are some great thoughts once you get them in the door, but I didn't see a lot of conversation about how you're going to make sure that you are bringing that non-certified teaching down by recruiting of those individuals, and then once you get them there, working on that retention piece. Because I did know you indicated that, which we know that's kind of the challenge across the board, that we're at about 3.67 years, but what are we doing once we get them in the door to keep them retained?
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
And then the other thing, I'm just curious, you mentioned UDL, so I just wanted to know, what does that look like for you? What are some of the things you guys are doing? Have you seen any changes that have come about from that? I know it might be kind of early, but is there anything you can put your hand on and say that we feel like that by providing this training for our teachers, that our kiddos are having this type of change or growth?
We are early in the process. We have a team of employees from each campus who are participating in that professional development and then are going back to provide the PD to our teachers. I would say one thing that we have seen differently in that kind of inclusion and offering more or different opportunities to meet student needs, whether it's students receiving services or students in the general education classrooms. I think that what UDL will do and is starting to do for us is to really look at what do students need, rather than here's what we've always done. What do students need, and how can we work within that to make sure we're providing that, and thinking outside the box a little bit. And one thing I know that we're going to try next year, kind of like some little kind of small group classes that go along with our secondary classes to provide some additional support for students who maybe don't need a resource or something as intensive as that, but they need a little bit extra support. So I think that's going to be really exciting to see how it works and see how it's going, with some, I'm sure, roadblocks and challenges, but working those out and seeing how that helps students. I'm excited about that.
And just curious, so are you guys also using any type of co-teaching model?
We
and all
are,
of that
yes.
as well? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one other quick question.
Okay.
Yeah.
5%, and 5 points to get to the letter grade. A lot of times in marketing, we place some things out there, but I'm not implying that that's what you did. But there has to be, in addition to the staffing, critical success factors that you see, things that have to go right in order for you to hit your mark. As I believe you said within a year. Could you talk to us about some of those factors that have to go right?
I think increasing that student attendance, students being at school, is something that has got to improve and go right in order for us to see some of those things. I think that consistency piece of utilizing the plan that we have in place and making sure that it's being implemented is something that has to be done and go right. And then, I think that just also celebrating the growth and the success that we've had, and not, we have a lot of great things going on too. And so that's something that we can incorporate and continue to do to keep the teacher and student morale up and excited about coming to school. So I would say that that's something else.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We really appreciate you coming before
Thank you
us today
guys so
and
much.
talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Summons?
Okay. The second school that we have present is KIPP Delta Public Schools. We have Mr. James Boyd, who's the executive director, and we also have Ms. Lakita Ward, who's the director of curriculum and instruction here this morning.
Thank you. Would all those who plan on testifying in behalf of the charter, would you please raise your right hand and stand? All right. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, you may begin.
Good morning, Charter Authorizing Panel.
Good morning.
Before I begin, we did have an update of some information, and I just wanted to provide you with an additional slide as opposed to giving you the entire deck. This will go in between slides 22 and 23.
We can have it now.
Good morning, Charter Authorizing Panel. My name is James Boyd Jr. I'm the very proud Executive Director of KIPP Delta Public Schools. Along with me is my Extraordinary Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Lakita Ward. We're here to talk about KIPP Blyville Collegiate Preparatory Elementary School. So as you should hopefully know, aware of the KIPP brand, KIPP Blyville is part of a network of schools that provide tuition-free assistance in education to 120,000 students across pre-K through 12 in 21 states, including the District of Columbia, with our motto of a future without limits. The purpose of KIPP Blyville College Preparatory Elementary School, which for the sake of that tongue twister, I'm just gonna call KCPS, instead of saying KIPP Blyville College Preparatory, if you'll allow me to use that abbreviation, with a focus of a robust academics and meaningful character development. And we hope that all our students and our alumnus are creating a wider path for opportunity and challenge for themselves and for those who follow. Again, with our understanding of our mission being together a future without limits, we work with our families within our community to prepare our students for college and career and beyond. The mission of KCPS will be to create a joyful school experience for students, families, staff, and our community. We focus on academic excellence and ensuring that our students have the academic, social, and emotional work that they need in order to be successful. So a little bit about myself. I have over 25 years experience. The end of this month will actually be my first year here with KIPP. Prior to that, I spent the lion's share of my community in Hillsborough County, which is in Tampa, Florida, which is the 7th largest school district in the country. And then prior to that, I spent the last 3 years in Providence, Rhode Island, where I was part of the turnaround team for Providence, which is the largest school district in the state of Rhode Island, which had been taken over by the state for its continuous failures. So I have experience in turnaround as both a school principal and as a district administrator, which is one of the reasons that I was brought here to KIPP, was to help the academic outcomes, not only for our schools, but our communities as a whole.
Good morning, you all.
Good morning.
I'm Lakita Ward. I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction. I've been in this position now 5 months, but I'm also a returning founder of KIPP Delta. I am a very proud native of Helena, Arkansas, and my 20 years of experience has actually been in traditional and charter schools.
I just wanted to share, I wanted to round out our senior leadership team. And the reason I'm bringing that up is, as Ms. Ward shared with you and I shared, we both have been with KIPP Delta for less than a year. The only member of my senior leadership team who is a returning veteran is Ms. Linda Murdoch. The other 3 members of my team are all hired under my tenure, along with Ms. Ward. So a little bit of information about KIPP Delta. The vast majority of our students are from the community, African American students. 88% of our students come from low SES background, and 5% of our students are categorized as special education. I wanted to flag our actual teaching experience. Even though our teachers at KIPP Delta average about 14 years of experience, within our actual BCPS community, they average about 2 years within the school, which means most of the teachers at the school are new to the school and the leadership team. So when we talk about the root causes of our current situation with BCPS, which is a school that has been a school rated an F for 2 consecutive years, one of the biggest things, which is what I just flagged, is teacher and leader attrition, inconsistent implementation of high quality instructional material, and gaps in the differentiation and teacher development. The things that we've put in place since I've been there is working on rebuilding our commitment to managing our schools differently at the district level, which includes myself and my senior leadership team, going with a new network-wide alignment of curriculum, including using the One KIPP initiatives, which I'll speak about, and then innovations with our data-driven interventions, and you'll see some of the positive trends that we've had with our K-2 students. Our goal is to increase our school by 1 letter grade during this year's assessment. As you can see, our goal is to move our grade from the current F to moving it to a D at the end of this school year and a C by the next school year. The ways that we plan on doing that is progress monitoring our student achievement and growth. So we want to increase our reading goal is to increase our student performance band in DIBELS, NWA, and Atlas assessment. So 40% of our students will increase 1 performance band in reading, and 50% of our students will increase 1 performance band in math, and that is being assessed by the NWEA and Atlas. We also have a plan to have our staff engage families to ensure student attendance improves, with the goal of 96% of our students attending school on a regular basis. The reason that is extremely important is we can't teach them if they aren't there. So if we get them in the building, we certainly have a better chance of ensuring our outcomes. One of the things that we are working on is our actual current DIBELS and NWEA data. So as you can see, this is where our current students sit at meeting or exceeding grade level benchmarks on DIBELS, as well as NWEA math.
So because we are making an intentional effort to change the BCPS letter grade, we set the goal of increasing the daily attendance average by 96%, by reducing the chronic absenteeism by 10%. We've driven the school year 23-24 results of 96% as a daily school attendance average, and the chronic absenteeism is down 3% from the 10% reduction goal. The leaders and staff are working very hard to implement class dojo systems, which has actually upped our family engagement to the point of where we have 160 families engaged using Parent Square. We've adopted and implemented HQIM in both reading and math this year. With CKLA Foundationals and Skills, along with 95% a strong phonics development program, the driven instruction at grades K-2 is now showing some significant gains. Our kindergarten students have moved 27% to 60%, first grade 44% to 54%, second grade 38% to 47%. Since the decision to implement both with fidelity and biweekly observations and feedback cycles, we've seen our BOY to MOY performance in grades K-2 meet and exceed grade level mastery. We've also been very lucky to be a part of the ecosystem that has now been created by the KIPP Foundation and the One KIPP mission, where we have schools across the country we are able to lean into as our sister schools for implementation support and PD offerings.
And I just want to say one of the reasons that we're flagging our K-2 growth is because anyone in education knows that children in grades K-2 are learning to read, so that for grades 3 through 12, they can read to learn. So we know if we focus on that early literacy part and get students at or above grade level by the time they reach third grade, we have a much higher prevalence of those students staying on grade level and earning and keeping proficiency.
And with the HQIM adoption and the supports in the data analysis, along with planning and assessment support provided by TNTP and APSRC coaches, we have seen significant growth in our kinder students who are showing up in both DIBELS and NWEA assessments. As you can see, their BOY to MOY shows 37% of students are only 3 points shy of the 40% growth goal. While first through 6 are not showing significant growth toward the target, we are still staying committed to the high quality instructional materials and the implementation programs that we have started. And we believe that with a combination of 1st through 5th, we see about 84% of students actually showing growth gains. We are now driving a new RTI structure and adding an extra 90 minutes of intervention spread throughout the day, throughout the school day. These are the impacts of the HQIM and also coaching used in math. In grades K to 6, we've implemented Eureka Squared this year, which is an updated version of Eureka Math that involves teachers and students using discourse during lessons to unpack their conceptual understanding with math problems. With the same coaching approach of lesson internalizations and more standards unpacking and skills alignment, our TNTP coaches are helping to support bi-weekly PLCs that involve our actual grade level teams being able to look at data. Also, the BCPS leaders are also utilizing math and reading interventionists throughout their schools, where this is supporting teachers to remediate students driven to cover foundational skills and topics that students will need to better understand the concepts and also build more confidence in their knowledge. Our intervention systems incorporated with the HQIM is used this year in comparison with student achievement metrics from the previous year. Here you see in this figure 2022-23 performance compared to 23-24. As you can see, there are significant gains we are having across K6 where students are showing better progress toward meeting on grade level benchmarks to help their reading achievement. This figure shows the impacts of math. While we do not see the same high impacts from the current year's effort, we do believe that our math teachers are deserving of more support in their math pedagogy and practices. This has caused us to incorporate a cadence of support that includes more professional development in the use of Eureka Squared. To better analyze their teachable moments, we also are incorporating videos where teachers are now videoing themselves where they're able to analyze their lessons with coaches, and the implementation of now a supporting system called iReady, where students are using the personalized instruction to get more at-bats at the use of their skills and concepts after book lessons.
And another thing I wanted to mention, when we look at our math scores, we have to be realistic and understand that we've shifted to a second adaptive curriculum with Eureka Squared, and we've only had 1 year of PD for those teachers. So we're confident that as we increase our PD offerings for teachers with Eureka Squared and much more lesson internalization, we feel like that data will improve, but we are conscious that this is our first year using this high quality instructional material, and so it's going to take teachers a while to get acclimated to using this material.
And with those effects, you all, I know Mr. Boyd passed out the slide, and I don't want to slight this information because this is a big win for us. We are the 4th highest performing school nationwide and catered to with growth out of 27 KIPP regions and 275 KIPP schools. Our students have met their end of year goals already at middle of year, and we believe that this momentum will carry into the next year, and we will actually see some great gains and also see a change in this letter grade.
So as we talk about some of the innovations that we are having within KIPP Delta, one of the things that we really want to flag is partnering with our KIPP Foundation. As I spoke before, KIPP Delta is part of an ecosystem of the KIPP system, and one of the things that is happening is KIPP has gone to what they're calling the One KIPP Initiative, which means previously each KIPP region had the autonomy to pick their own curriculum resources, but with our new CEO, we are now going to an alignment so that all of our elementary schools within the KIPP network will be using an aligned curriculum. One of the things that makes that so powerful for KIPP Delta is because our schools are so small and in a rural area. When we have PLCs, they don't always have access to some of the best practices that other teachers are using. With now being part of that KIPP ecosystem, they'll have the capacity to collaborate with teachers who are using a similar curriculum in other geographic areas with similar students to actually see what are those best practices that those teachers are using that they can use to directly impact their students. So parts of the KIPP One initiative that we're really enthusiastic about for this specific school are our K-8 alignment on math, our K-8 alignment on literacy, and our leadership development, which will focus on teaching those leaders the skills they need not only to be successful leading their school, but also as instructional leaders with supporting the development of their teachers and staff. We're also working on progress monitoring using data-driven small group instruction interventions to work with our students in both Tier 1 and Tier 2. We also have a partnership with coaching for early literacy with APSRC, and also using that to work with our paraprofessionals to work with them on gaining those skills to help teach students. We also are using interventions in small groups to work on our DIBELS and math data. And I do have to say this is one of the first times under Ms. Ward that we're actually pushing our leaders and our teachers to actually use data to inform their practice, and especially when they're creating homogeneous groups of students who are struggling with the same concepts, as well as heterogeneous groups when they're doing small group instruction, that these decisions will actually be based on actual assessment and teacher-made assessment data. Our commitment to our students does not waver. We do understand where our school grade is, but I can tell you that my team has come in specifically with the understanding that we are in a situation of turnaround, and we have to turn these schools around for the purposes of educating our students, and it's also what our community deserves. When we look at a comparative study between the other schools in the Blytheville area, Blytheville has 2 other elementary schools that are both part of Blytheville schools, and that is Blytheville Primary School, which serves students in K-2, and Blytheville Elementary School, which serves students in 3 through 5. This is this year's index score, so as you can see, our school, BCPS, as well as Blytheville Primary and Elementary are all rated Fs. When you look at our 2022-2023 report card, you can see BCPS is represented by blue and Blytheville Public Schools is represented by purple. You can see in what areas we are comparative on our math, ELA, and science scores. When we talk about our interventions, one of the things that we flagged earlier is trying to get our average daily attendance up to 96% and above. And the things that we're doing is really working on our relationships with our families, whereby ensuring that we're having scripted phone calls to families when students are not at school. And by scripted, I mean making sure that we're asking those questions of what things are going on and what we can do to be supportive if families do not have students in school. We are aware that truancy is sometimes an avenue that communities make, but we also have to understand we have to look and talk to families to see what are those specific impediments to them getting to school. We try to make those phone calls every day by 9 a.m. So if there is an opportunity the student can get to school, they've only missed maybe an hour and a half of instruction, if we can encourage those parents to bring those students to school. And we also are having our student success coordinators schedule home visits for students who are coming close to being habitually or chronically absent. So that kicks in when students have missed 3 or more consecutive days and have it communicated to the school as to why. We're also training our operations coordinators and student success coordinators to properly document student attendance to help prevent chronic absenteeism. And we're also working on the frequency of communication with families about chronic absenteeism and actually educating them on what chronic absenteeism actually means, so that the parents are sometimes not aware that when they have students who miss a certain number of days, it negatively impacts that student's learning, especially in the primary grade. So we have to educate families on the importance of attendance. Other things that we're doing is we're working with our teachers on using the curriculum with fidelity. We have our teachers using CKLA. We're having teachers use Centers, My Perspective, and Eureka Squared, and ensuring, again, that teachers have not only access to the high quality instructional material, but also the PD that's necessary for them to be successful in using that material. One of the things that we're doing is we've increased the frequency of teacher observations. We've created feedback loops on improving academics, and we're using our partnership with TNTP, who does specific content training for teachers. We're also making sure that teachers are using literacy and math centers as part of their interventions, ensuring that they're doing small group tier 1 instruction. We're using data trackers to ensure teachers are monitoring students' progress. And again, we're starting to implement assessments using exit tickets, end of module exams, and also whatever assessments come with the specific curriculum that we're using. So that's CKLA, also using DIBELS, MAPS, and I-rated data. We're also making sure that school leaders and APs, assistant principals, are meeting to examine student work and have a data analysis protocol which they've developed through our partnership with TNTP. Again, going back to our attendance as part of our development, we are making sure that we're making phone calls to families with attendance procedures, using truancy in those extreme cases, and making sure that our teachers are receiving the appropriate professional development on our curriculum resources, as well as using examples of student work, which is a protocol that has been supported by TNTP. Also making sure that our math teachers are receiving support and professional development, using the math Common Core examples of standards, and using our math centers, which again is work that has been supported by our relationship with TNTP. One of the things that Ms. Ward mentioned earlier is we use a platform called Torch, which is what we're having our actual school teachers record their lessons on so they can receive feedback on those lessons. We're also creating professional development for content teachers through TNTP, and one of the things that we implemented over the last couple of months to ensure development of our leaders is we're now instituting, or we have instituted since the beginning of this calendar year, half-day PD sessions for all school leaders. That is actually facilitated by Ms. Ward, myself, and other members of senior leadership, going on specific instructional leadership practices for our school leaders to use. As I said before, we understand that we are trying to make transformational change within our schools, within the KIPP ecosystem, and within the Delta. And so we understand that we have to work on improvement to increase our mission. I can tell you personally, as a person who has just come here, our schools and our community do not deserve the grades that they have. And so it is my job to ensure that we change those grades and those outcomes, because that's what the community desires. That's what the community needs. One of the reasons that charter schools exist in these ecosystems is to ensure parents, families, and communities have choice, and that they have options, because we know options are always will increase outcomes. And so it is my personal charge and my team's personal charge to ensure that we increase outcomes for our students within the Delta. Last, I'd like to wrap up with our mission, which you can see at the top is our student outcomes, and that is supported by our 4 pillars of strong academic programs, a bench of talent, operational excellence, and fiscal health.
Thank you. Dr. Wright McMurray?
I got used to you, sir. Thank you so much for coming in today and giving us updates on where you are and what you kind of thought through. One thing, kind of picking back up from our prior conversation, do you have information to share, like where you guys are with like your certified teachers, and have you had any conversations around, is that something that you feel like is impacting anything that's happening with you?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. The vast majority of our teachers are uncertified. Two of the things that we are actively engaged in conversations about is one of the questions that the panel asked earlier, is looking at our pay scale, which is something we can do with the learners, and looking at, do we need to adjust the pay scale for certified versus uncertified teachers? One of the things we also have been doing is we have been providing retention stipends for teachers in critical need areas such as math, science, and special education. We also traditionally will financially support teachers who go to get a master's degree in those high need areas, but those ideas had not been actually transitioned to actually working on certified teachers. So that is something that me and my team are actually having conversations about. How can we incentivize getting teachers certified? We have small cadres of teachers who will join our PEP, but the number of teachers is nowhere near what we need. And where our teachers are enthusiastic about teaching, they just don't have those fundamental skills. And so our first step has been to work on our leadership development to get those school leaders to have the skill sets to support those teachers. But we are in active conversations about how we can incentivize the teachers to actually get certified, because it is a need in the Delta area.
And you said that the number is vastly. Do you have an idea of what that percentage of your folks are?
The last I checked, it was around 70% of our teachers were not certified. So about 30% of our teachers are certified.
Okay.
On
So,
this campus.
okay. So, similar to the last group, it would, I would like to see you guys kind of work in a goal around that, on how you're going to kind of, I know again, this is everyone's issue, but at least if we can get it on paper, then we can start working through what are some things we can do to get more of those folks on board, and then also how do we work to retain them, which I think is, you kind of spoke to that a little bit, where you are looking at maybe having a pay differential between those that are certified and not certified.
And Dr. McMurray, I also think that it's building awareness. We are dealing with some cultural things that definitely we notice that awareness needs to be, put out there and communication made. Also, people understanding that they have mentors or they have partnerships that can lead them to the avenues to become certified. So being a product of a rural community, I'm just going to be honest with you. What was I exposed to? Not the most best quality education, right? And so I'm not saying that's what I want to see for my students, but I do want to see people who are investing in the KIPP model understanding that that is a big part of how we educate our kids to the bar of where they are able to compete with other students in the state.
A question I did have, trying to get back to my slide. On slide 13, you mentioned that your plan is to increase by at least one full letter grade by this coming fall. Do you mind, how far off are you from the next letter grade right now? Like how many points would that be?
6 points.
6 points. Okay. And so that's reasonable. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I make notes on slides. Slide 30. So the question I had when I was looking at what you presented there, so when you did your comparison, and again, thank you for providing that information. I like to always see when we're talking about our students and we're looking at their outcomes, how are we comparing to, your partner, your sister schools. So you provided us for K through 6, and then we looked at the one that is K through 2, and then the other one is 3 through 6. Do you have an idea of, if you were just looking at those same exact students, what would be your comparable outcomes? So if you compared yourself to their K through 2 students, and then you compared yourself to their 3 through 6 students, what that looks like?
Yes, ma'am. Well, K through 2 they're not assessed. So we look at our 3 through 5.
Okay.
Those numbers are the same. They're both. And then when you look at their middle school, which would encompass, when you look at Blyville's middle school, which is 6th grade, and our 6th grade, they're both unfortunately comparable. They're both Fs.
Okay, so even with that, you're still kind of
Yes, ma'am.
finding out. Okay. And then with this that you provided to us,
Yes, ma'am.
can you just provide a little bit more detail on what exactly this means? Because I see you spoke to that you're the 4th highest performing nationwide against your KIP
Yes, ma'am.
partners. And so how does that translate into what we are seeing and how that kind of shakes out of what we are seeing for what your state expectations would be?
I think the translation happens with the implementation of CKLA foundational skills and also 95%. Out of all of those schools in the network, we are the only region who is implementing those 2 HQIM. The actual network, they were, in a state of shock, seeing that our students have met EOY already with those implementations, and I definitely think this is an anchor that shows that when you choose the right things for your students, you give your teachers the right training to use those things, you will see big impacts. And for us to have about 73% of students performing either average or better, that is significantly better than where we were in the beginning.
And just to ask and to share, outside of this, and then I think you shared some other pieces, is there anything else that you guys didn't get a chance to share you're like extremely proud of right now, that you feel like that what you're implementing, you're seeing some difference or some growth or some positive outcomes?
I think the positive impacts that Mr. Boyd and myself are making, along with the rest of the senior leadership team, getting some infrastructures that were once great back in place, and seeing that transformational work takes time. Also, the investment in the areas that we serve takes time. I can tell you that those are truly pieces that I value as being also a stakeholder in this region.
Yeah, I would agree. One of the things that my team has really been proud of is putting systems in place so that we can systematize a lot of those best practices. So that's probably one of the biggest things, that's kind of like the analogy about buying a house. These are the things that are behind the walls that you don't see, but you'll see the benefits of it. So if we do good electrical, you don't have to worry about the lights flickering. So we know that we're doing a lot of work behind the walls with high quality instructional material, framing out how we're going to actually do professional development, placing a lot of the onus on our school leaders to be the instructional leaders and providing them with professional development every week to ensure that their practices are going to translate to teacher supports. Specifically going to your previous question about the number of uncertified teachers, we also have a large cadre of teachers who are novice within their first 3 years of teaching. So ensuring that our leaders have the tools to actually ensure that those teachers are able to provide students with high quality interventions and activities is going to be one of the things that we're most proud of, because that's something you don't really see tangibly, but you'll see it as a lagging indicator of how well our students are doing on performance. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to share that, is because for teachers at schools that have been underperforming for a while, for now to us to put in training and support, professional development, and high quality instructional material, and for them to have that level of growth within the first year of implementation is something we're proud of. And so when you work with schools that aren't doing well, you take every opportunity to give them that accolade and that pat on the back to get them continuously going. So that's one of the reasons we're really proud of that data.
Well, again, thank you for coming in and sharing, and I do realize that you guys are a very new team.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I look forward to further conversations and seeing some of the outcomes you guys are able to bring together.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scott?
Yes, I agree, and certainly want to reiterate that we're really appreciative of your coming in, sharing, and just as a level set, this particular document, I would love to hear, bring us up to speed with fourth in the network, but in the landscape of KIPP schools across the country, are there any that are directly parallel or close, similar to what you're serving here in Arkansas?
Our North Carolina region is. They actually build their model off the Delta. And so they are located in rural communities, still experiencing some of the external factors we are, because their two locations are, I think, about 3 hours away. Our two locations are about 2.5 hours away. So trying to figure out how to, strongly support those two locations with the, I'm just gonna say with the gaps that we have in staff. That's another huge hurdle that we have. So seeing that, in that rural community, how effective they've been, we're kind of duplicating some of the positions. We've looked at their organizational charts, and we're trying to figure out how can we somewhat replicate the same things.
Yes, and I would also say, even without looking at the apples to apples comparison, we're also talking about some of the most high-performing charter schools within their communities. And so for us to say that as far as growth, we're the fourth highest growth when we're talking about other geographic areas like Albany, New York, or DC, or NoCal, which are schools that have had a history of being high-performing, that we have better growth metrics to them. Again, it's something we're really proud of, because even if it doesn't directly translate to our proficiency, we know that growth is going to lead to proficiency. And so again, when you have a community that has taken a lot of negativity because of their performance, anytime we have an opportunity to share things that they're doing well, we have to try to elevate that. And so that's one of the reasons that we're really proud of that, because we're also talking about in comparison to some very high performing KIPP regions, but we're still outpacing them as far as our growth.
Excellent, thank you. I hear time and time again you talk about community, and I'm well aware of rural communities. Our children are faced with not the same options, but they are still faced with the work that you do in regards to educating them. So if you could just describe community and support within that community that you inherited, that would be good.
I would say for me, one of the things that I have not been able to do as well as I wanted to because of trying to focus on our academics is my relationship with the community. So that is something that is an area of growth for me, but I will share something that I'm particularly proud of that we have done in our community. Within the Blytheville area, that area is known as, I guess, the de facto steel capital of the nation. And so one of the larger companies within that region is Nucor Steel. I'm working on starting a partnership with Nucor. Nucor has two programs. The one I would talk about is called New Path. And what New Path is they take high school seniors that have just graduated and they hire them on at about $50,000 a year. So it's an 18-year-old who gets $50,000 a year. And they give them an intensive year of introduction to Nucor and all the different facilities that work there. At the end of that year, if they're successful, they will be hired on full-time at Nucor, making upwards of $90,000 a year. The reason that's so important is because in a high poverty area, that is sustainable generation changing wealth. Because if that child, 18, 19-year-old stays at Nucor, they'll make almost $1 million in 10 years. And so we were just able to start that partnership with Nucor that they're going to take some of our seniors this year and put them in New Path. The reason we're particularly proud of that is prior to this year, it had been a program exclusively for Blytheville public schools. And so I was able to work with my KIPP Forward director to talk to the people at Nucor and say, if we didn't exist, our kids would be at Blytheville, so why is it not an opportunity for them? And also, because we're a charter school, one of the things we could do is we could actually create an elective class on employability skills, so we can ensure that those candidates who you pick for New Path, we've taught about punctuality, we've taught about those soft skills, about things that they said have been issues with students not being successful in the program, like punctuality and, just those nuances that sometimes young people haven't learned as what they need to do to be a good employee. So we said we can actually curate a course for those students as an elective, so that by the time we have those students as seniors, they'll be ready to join your workforce. That's something I'm particularly proud that I'm going to be able to share with my community, because that is going to ensure that those students within Blytheville are going to have that financial security that they're going to need, and it's going to keep that money within that community, which is also going to help our schools, because if you live in a community, you pay taxes in the community, so you help the community that way.
Can I hop in for just a second? So I actually had written that down as one of my notes to come back to suggest to you. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we are working very closely with Mr. Henderson, and who also sits on our state board, and we were having conversations about backing that down even earlier in the student's experience. So would love to touch base with you on how we're talking about earlier engagement, our middle schools, building that pipeline a little earlier for students to be able to know about the process, so that when they get to high school, then they're in better positions, not only academically, but socially.
Absolutely.
To have made some good choices so that they're able to do that. So would love to have further conversations about that with you and your team.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm certainly glad to hear that. And thanks, Dr. McMurray. At the end of the day, as you increase your relationship with your community partners, excuse me, I believe you set the stage to inject a little hope
Absolutely.
in the community.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that's all the kids need,
Yes.
some hope, because short of that, it's like, I'm living in this community, where are my options? And I find terrible options when they leave school within the community. So that way of leveraging relationships with some of the community partners will be huge, and having them being a part of some of the decision making you're doing when you have committee meetings, having those stakeholder voices. And by the way, I would say let's not exclude the voices of the kids. I'm told that the students should be at the table, but more importantly, they are at the table.
Absolutely.
Because they know exactly what's going on. And so when you're trying to gather data about mapping appropriate solutions that they may need, then it could come from their voices. So I've got one other question, and that is, we have a situation where there's a brand, and now you're rebranding. And a part of your effort on the leadership piece is to take a look at all the elements of academics, but also you're showcasing your mastery of your understanding of financials, and also on the operations side as well. And you, as relatively new, especially Mr. Boyd, your turnaround experience, what kind of strategies can you say would be most applicable to what you're doing now in the new role you're playing in?
Thank you for that question. I would say one of the biggest things is when I look at the organization, from a macro level, we did not place enough emphasis on the academics department. We did not curate enough people who had instructional expertise. So one of the things that Ms. Ward has done and continues to do is actually looking for individuals, specifically teachers, who we can elevate to coaches. Because when you're dealing with a large number of uncertified teachers and novice teachers, you have to really leverage opportunities for teachers to work with other teachers to support their growth. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I've noticed, is we had not placed enough emphasis on our academics department. That is really, in my opinion, where the lion's share of our funding should go, supporting student growth and achievement. And so that's probably one of the biggest things that we're working on now, is hiring a lot more people within the academics field, and not necessarily classroom teachers. And I'm certainly not trying to bloat central office, but we have to have more people who can support teachers and leaders. So that's probably one of the first things. And then just looking at some of those operational costs that we can try to be much more fiscally responsible for in order to support academics. Because if we have a greater bench of coaches and master teachers, those also become our future school leaders. If we really invest in our paraprofessionals and their development, they become our next level of teachers. So looking at our bench and our development program and really supporting academics are probably two of the biggest things. And then the last thing I would say is really trying to be really good fiscal stewards of our money, working on trying to make decisions on a systems level to increase our capacity to do things that our students need. One of the things that KIP is really proud of is our KIP Forward program, which is we have an entire department that actually supports students once they get into college. And there was a article written in the Washington Post this past fall that showed that KIP as an organization, that our students graduate from college at a much higher rate, and it's not comparable to any other region because we follow those students. And we don't just follow those students, but we also provide support. So whether it's supporting students financially to a limited extent, and sometimes supporting students financially is just telling them the things that they should be doing as a college student, because a lot of our students are first-time college students who don't have prior knowledge of how college systems work. So actually having our coaches who actually go visit our students on college campuses to support them is something else that is really important. And I don't think as an organization for KIP Delta that we've focused enough energy on that component as well, because a lot of those students who may be local will end up becoming, hopefully, if they so decide to stay within the Delta region, could be our next generation educators. So we also have to work on that, because one of the great things about the LEARNS legislation, somebody who taught for over 12 years, I wasn't making $50,000 as a first-year teacher. So that is a great incentive if we can actually create the buzz within people within our community, that's a great way for them to give back to their community as well as actually get a sustainable income.
Excellent. My last point, not necessarily a question, but student success planning is a huge element to injecting that hope. And the last piece is the community service learning piece, where you're working with those community partners and identifying opportunities for them to volunteer some time. And that could help as well.
It is, and that's also a great question. I met with the Blytheville Rotary Club about 2 weeks ago, and one of the things that we talked about with the Rotary Club is they do a tree planting drive, and so we've had preliminary conversations with them about the next time they do something like that, actually working with them. We also have at our high school has already adopted a median that's complete 100% adjacent from the school. So we've already started the foundations of community service project. But again, that's another great part about our KIP Forward program is the director and I've already had conversations about ways that we can get our students to start earning community service hours, and not just our high school students, but even some of our middle school students, so they can start earning those hours. Because one of the things that we flag is sometimes those community service projects also can become ways of getting students interested in things they did not even know was a possibility as a career path, or just sparking their interest in being globally minded but locally committed. So we're very proud of some of the initial groundwork that we made towards those community service components. And as someone who came from Florida, community service is already part of our graduation requirements. So I'm really glad that it's happening here, because students get an opportunity again to do things that they probably would not have done previously had they not been required to do community service.
Mr. Davis?
Yep, couple questions from me. I'm still a little confused in regards to the attendance rate. What is the current attendance rate at the school?
The current attendance rate is 96%
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
Okay,
daily
so it is
attendance rate of 96%.
And what about teachers?
As far as teachers, right now, I can't give you the
Yeah.
actual percentage, but I can tell you with that 96%, a big contribution of that is teachers present and bringing that joy factor that we have in BCPS.
Okay. And you talked about the 90 minutes of intervention. Can you talk a little bit more about how that happens, when that happens, with whom does that happen?
So we just implemented the iReady system where it actually gives us the diagnostic results as something that's a driving source of metric that we use to create our instructional groupings.
Yep, and how often does that run?
We just took our first diagnostic actually 3 weeks ago.
Okay, and what's the plan for the diagnostic? How often will you run that?
It will run 3 times a year, at beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year. With us just implementing this program, our first test was 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And so we gathered some great data from the test. And we also know what are the areas of growth where our students need to grow. Right now, we've looked at the collaboration with TNTP and started some standard scoping. And we've done this with calendars to see what students are, what standards students have mastered versus those that have not, that align to the personalized instruction that has been prescribed for students. What we foresee in the next 4 weeks to get ready for, Atlas is a big push around teachers actually incorporating student-centered groups that will be happening in sync around the classroom. And most of these group goals will be based on the performance that student had on iReady. And we are taking advantage of the instructional resources that the program also offers to refine those group settings to actually hit the areas where we see the most deficits.
And when is that happening? Because you talked about the 90 minutes of intervention. Is that in addition to, or is that during?
It's actually I'm going to say in sync with regular class instruction.
Okay.
Also with some pull-out time that we have happening with our interventionists.
Okay. And so when you talked about, Mr. Boyd, you talked about progress monitoring and data-driven small group intervention. Is that the iReady is what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. If we could go back to slide, I have it as 31. It's the comparison study, 2023 school report card. It's probably in the 30 somewhere in the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Help me just understand, when I look at, particularly, I'm gonna pull this out because it jumped out at me. When I look at 3rd grade math and then 4th grade math, there's a huge gap there, right? And growth in a positive aspect. I'm assuming I'm assuming the students that were in this, I'm trying to figure out what's the opportunity there? Like, how do we capture that growth or what that means? And how do we hold on to that? And then, of course, when you go from 5th grade to 6th grade, you see a significant dip there. So I'm just trying to get I'm trying to ride the wave. Like, what's the cause of that significant growth in this chart? And I know this is static, right? One moment in time. And then on the other end, kind of the dip. Any idea what that might be a result of?
I think the result of is talent. At our K-2 grade levels, we have very strong kindergarten through 2nd grade teachers. And where we see a dip is when we get to those upper grade levels. This year we implemented Eureka Squared, which is a different version of Eureka Math. I taught Eureka Math. It's pretty hard to teach Eureka Math, especially if you are a person that definitely needs more development with conceptual understanding and how that works with students. And so in part of this, we've noticed that our teachers need more exposure, not only to the curriculum development, but also just the concepts of math and that pedagogy. Getting them in more PLC communities where they're able to look at student work against what they do and perform on that student work is now opening those eyes. Also getting to classrooms more and just having real-time coaching instances happen when students are seeing misconceptions. That is definitely where I can tell you is an area of growth, but we know for sure we know for sure right now what we would like to do to help this. And we are seeing some impacts with some of that talent.
Yeah. How do you support, because Ms. Ward, you talked about being in Helena, how do you support a Blyvolt from Helena? How does the leadership team do that? Is it on the road constantly, kind of visiting? Is there someone there you kind of tap into? What does that look like?
So Mr. Boyd in my home office is in Blyvolt. And so we're actually located very close to this campus, BCPS campus. We
Okay.
work very closely in partnership with our external coaches as TNTP and also APSRC. I can tell you that he and I on average are probably on the road 3 days a week, going and support both communities. That's 5 hours of transport a day because we both choose to go back to our homes and stay at night. It is a stretch, but we also know what we are committed to. And for me, this is more personal than anything. So I could just tell you that it is a big task,
Yeah.
but we're trying.
As someone who spends a tremendous amount of time on the road, I can appreciate that. And the last is not necessarily a question, but a comment. By all accounts, you all at the Helena location just dealt with some very difficult situations in regards to the water.
Yes.
And so just thanks for your leadership in ensuring that those students continue to kind of move forward with their education as some of these things that are out of your control continues to happen in some of those communities. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin?
Yes, thank you. So, Mr. Boyd, a question. You're new to Blytheville?
Yes, sir.
Tell us how long you've been there.
I've been there since March 28th, 2023.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming to Blytheville. Your history and your educational experience is impressive,
Thank you.
and I know that they're happy to have you there.
I'm happy to be here.
And Ms. Ward, you're from Helena, West Helena,
Yes, I am.
but you also work in Blytheville. I'm trying to follow up on Mr. Davis's question. So you guys are both, your offices are in Blytheville.
Yes, sir.
Okay, where do you all live?
I live in Blytheville.
Blytheville.
You live in Blytheville? Okay. And then, following up also on Mr. Davis's question about the impact of Helena, West Helena, are you all like a branch of them so that you report to someone in Helena, or do you report to someone at KIPP National? How does the reporting structure work?
The best bad analogy is it's almost like a franchise.
Okay.
So we have to follow very specific rules and mandates from the franchise, but as far as the autonomy, prior to the One KIPP initiative, each region's executive director or CEO had the autonomy to do whatever they so chose as far as operations and just about everything. It just worked within that franchise. One of the great things about the KIPP One initiative is now there's going to be an alignment. So there'll be a curricular alignment so that, like I said, my third grade teachers will be able to PLC with a third grade teacher in NoCal who may be using the same curriculum and having phenomenal data to actually see what are some of those best teacher moves to use. Myself, my senior leadership team, we all work within both communities. So we have 3 schools in Helena, which is our traditional elementary, middle, and high school, and in the Blytheville area, we have 2 schools. We have a K through 6 and a 7 through 12. So we support all 5 of those schools. My senior leadership team does, but we also fall under the umbrella of KIPP, which is our franchise title.
Okay, that's interesting. I like the franchise
Okay.
description. That helps me. So what I hear you saying, at least what I think I hear you saying, is that the structure that you have in place between Helena, West Helena, and Blytheville, and then KIPP, the One KIPP structure, is a helpful structure for you all to move your grades forward.
We feel, yes, sir.
Okay, that's good. Sometimes it's not that way. Sometimes you get, bureaucracies that kind of
Absolutely.
that are
I worked for Hillsborough County, which is the 7th largest school district in the nation. And just as an example, I tell people, I was a middle school principal. I was one of 43 middle school principals.
Wow.
That is when you have a bureaucracy.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Well, I'm glad you guys don't have that.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Ward, I'm thrilled that you have a math background. I think that's wonderful. That's hard to get math expertise in Little Rock, much less in Blytheville. So I think that's wonderful. I'm familiar with Blytheville, and I'm familiar with Helena, West Helena, very familiar. And I think you all have a real opportunity. I like the fact that you have reached out to Nucor.
Yes, sir.
That's a huge opportunity. And then also you have another steel plant or two down in Osceola, which is not too far away.
Yes, sir.
And so uniquely for you all in the Delta, there are jobs for your graduates. And in a lot of places in the Delta, that's not true.
Correct.
I had lunch with the president of Nucor years ago, well before you guys were in Blytheville. But he told me, and this goes back to the math issue, that he could not hire any graduates of Blytheville High School because when they came into Nucor, they couldn't pass the math test that they give everybody. And so you all can change the dynamic of that and with the partnership with him and then down in Osceola too, you could really make a difference. And your grades will reflect that. The one thing I guess I'm a little nervous about is you all are going from an F to a D to a C in 3 years. That's the plan. Is that?
Yes, sir.
That's right. That's a pretty aggressive plan.
It's what our community deserves.
Well, I agree. Do you think you can do that? Because there's lots of variables you don't control.
It's already down there. It's
Yeah,
already down there.
and let me just say, as a middle school principal, I was able to move my school from a D to a C within 1 year, and I can tell you, it's not anything magical. It's quality Tier 1 instruction. It's holding everybody on campus accountable, from the custodian all the way to the school leader, and most importantly, is really engaging in the community and ensuring the community understands that. One of the first things I did when I was the principal of a D-rated school, I asked all my teachers to raise their hand if they felt like they were a D-rated teacher. And not a single teacher raised their hand. So I said, so if you don't feel like you're a D-rated teacher, then our score should show it. And so having those type conversations is, I feel like, the most important. Our students are always going to come in with deficits. That's the nature of the game. But what we do to intervene to support those students is what's key. So when Ms. Ward brought in us using iReady and ensuring that school leaders were really looking at data, which are some of the things that research has shown improve outcomes for schools. The two most important levers of increasing school proficiency are the quality of the teachers and what they believe about students, and second, the quality of the school leader and what they believe about students. Ensuring that teachers have high expectations for students, regardless of their background, is so important. I can speak for myself. I'm a child of poverty. I grew up in a single parent home. My mother believed in education, even if she had a GED. But she believed that education was what was going to change my outcome from her outcome. I can say that my mother, as a single parent with 3 children, she has 3 children with master's degrees who are all homeowners, as a lady who had a GED and was a custodian. So nothing prepares students for success better than a high quality education from a teacher who cares and a leader who ensures that they hire teachers who care. Yeah. So we can do that, sir.
You're exactly right. I think it is aggressive. I'll enjoy watching you all achieve it.
Absolutely.
And I personally believe, based on meeting you all just this first time, that you will achieve it.
Yes,
so
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Newton?
I simply like to echo what Mr. Baldwin said. One thing that I know for a fact, because I've seen it, is that rural poverty America, are some of the people with the least expectations, but are equipped with resilience and history and pride enough to accomplish what they need to accomplish. That being said, oftentimes they can't do it without leadership.
Yes.
And the ability to bring things together and people together, the resources together, regardless of race, regardless of socioeconomic status or education. So I can profess and confess that I know that rural America is waiting for this challenge. I sense your energy. I sense your, I'll use the analogy, the sports analogy of the March Madness. And generally, I told my son the other day, and all the 65 teams that come, everybody has an expectation that they can win it all.
Yes.
And so we decide based on whether they're seeded number 1 or seeded number 20 or whatever. But there's that drive and that ability to be able to overcome. And if you don't, you get back. And one thing that comes with sports is trash talk. And I don't mean to diminish your presentation today, but you guys are talking trash. And oftentimes you'll have an opportunity to prove yourself. And I see that energy. I know that the Delta is as people and families are as rich as the land is.
Mm-hmm.
And I commend you for your commitment to your area to say, we can do it and we'll prove it. I don't know what progress you'll make. I'm sure that you will make progress. And I hope that somehow that could be recognized, because oftentimes people just dismiss us. I've worked in social services area most of my life. I know how important it is for preparation. I commend you on your new core, and not just that, but the plan you have to equip the students before they get there. We've done job development in rural areas, and young people say, I have to go every day. I have to be on time. I got there or whatever, or knowing how to resolve conflicts, and just understanding the system of showing up every day, and that speaks to your attendance too. So I applaud you, and there is a secret that Delta folks have, and like I say, it may not be leaps and bounds in terms of performance, but one thing they can be assured of is that you have a heart of commitment, and they have a pride in knowing that they could do it, for the teachers, and don't underestimate the value of involvement of parents.
Yes.
Now, they bring a lot of different things. They may not bring what another school's population is, but they bring what they bring. It's like a potluck.
Mm-hmm.
So they bring what they bring, and they bring it with sincerity. But if you take it and put it to the side, that's another thing. So, well, that's not as important as the person who brought the ham. Yes, it is. So I'm energized by the presentation, the commitment, but most of all, the resilience of the folks to come together when they this is too sermonish, I guess.
Oh, we need it. Keep it going.
Well, I'm just saying, I know for a fact that it can be done. And you can be an example of KIP International as far as overcoming the challenges. And you could be a national example of what can be done. Both your backgrounds suggest that, and certainly the background of your team. You seem to have a very strong team.
Yes,
and that's as important as anything else. So make the trash talking real.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other comments or questions?
I have to, I appreciate towards your comments, Ms. Newt's comments. It's huge. At the end of the day, there's several things that can get your attention. What got our attention was these grades.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was, over the course of time, you weren't tracking right.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids need help.
Yes.
And the help needed in times past have come from people that recognize the need for a job.
Mm-hmm.
So they acquire skills, they get paid, but then they find themselves making changes and churn comes up. They're moving, turn around, etc. But there are others that recognize the need to serve kids in the Delta who understand that it's their work in life, not just a job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they acquire skills, they get paid, but they stick it out. So they do the trash talking, but they become doers of what they say they're going to do.
Right.
So I encourage you to do that, because again, the very first thing was the looking at the letter grade is like, who's going to do this? It sounds like someone with the heart's passion for the kids, a heart's passion for leadership will be the ones to get it done. So we encourage you to do just that, because we need leadership and something that's referenceable for the communities in the Delta. And looks like you're on point with committing to serve at KIPP Delta.
Yes.
So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
One more thing, I'd encourage you, I think it's important for children that live in small areas and isolated in many ways to use people. You mentioned Rotary, and I know when I was in Rotary, one of the things that we did was go out and read to children and in schools, and I think they need to see the complete community.
Yes, ma'am.
And oftentimes that the Rotary is made up of people that they don't generally see. But to introduce them to Rotary-ish things and vice versa,
Yes,
I think would be very helpful so they can see life outside, even Nucor,
Yes, ma'am.
in terms of what they might be able to do. And it also is an opportunity to engage outward entities into what you're doing and enrich that. So that's one of the things I think is very helpful, is having people know who you are, what you're doing, and buy into it from a community perspective, from a county perspective, and from a state perspective.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And then just one more thing from a logistical standpoint. You know, and I said this to Eastham as well, but you talked about talent and needing that coaching in relation to talent. I think if you can begin to start to, you know, develop a system where you're getting your teachers certified, but then get them to that lead and master designation, where you can have that leadership in your building, boots on the ground, right there working with them. Plus, there are incentives involved with that. I think that'll be really helpful for you. And if you need any help with that process, you can always contact my office.
Thank you.
And we can walk you through that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming today and,
Thank you.
and your presentation, and just thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any new business? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. We'll take a quick break and then we'll come back for our work session.
Any comments?
We're the structure people, those are educators.
That's right.
Business structure.
The boots on the ground.
Yeah.